Coming up next on Arizona Horizon, we'll look at why an attempt to sell Chase Field to private investors fell through. Also tonight, what impact will a Trump presidency have on the U.S. Supreme Court? And we'll see how hockey is being used to teach STEM skills. Those stories next on Arizona Horizon.
Arizona Horizon is made possible by contributions from the Friends of Arizona PBS, members of your PBS station. Thank you.
Good evening and welcome to Arizona Horizon. I'm Ted Simons. The state Supreme Court today reversed a lower court ruling regarding warrantless searches of those on probation. A trial judge had ruled that such searches violated a probationer's rights, but the High Court disagreed and said that there was clear evidence that the search was legal. The decision means that a drugs and weapons case against a convicted crack cocaine dealer can be refiled and that people on probation cannot move to exclude evidence seized from many warrantless searches. The attempted sale of Chase Field has fallen through. This after an investment company that was considering buying the Diamondbacks home stadium withdrew its offer. Here to bring us up to speed on all this is Mike Sunix of the Phoenix Business Journal. How you doing?
Thanks for having me.
So investors drop out of this Diamondbacks deal for the stadium. Well, what's going on here?
Well, this dates back to the summer when a Stadium Real Estate Investors Partners was the name of this group. They're out of Atlanta and New York, and they approached the Maricopa County that owns the stadium and said, hey, we'll buy this thing for you for $60 million. And the county stadium district, which governs the stadium, said, okay, we'll reach a letter of intent with you, which means we just negotiate with you. Originally, they were supposed to get the deal done by Halloween. They extended that till January. The catch in all this was the D-backs, the tenant at the ballpark, that's their home field, has veto power over any kind of sale, or the D-backs come in and say, hey, we'll buy Chase Field if the county wants to sell it at some point. And the problem was the investment group and the D-backs had a hard time even getting together to meet. The D-backs wanted to see their financials, their business plan, according to this group, who wrote a letter to the county this week nixing the deal, saying that the groups complained that the D-backs really wouldn't let them in the front door to try to get the deal done. The D-backs responded after this saying they were deeply offended by this. They didn't like how the group approached this. And this all comes after the county and the team had this big spat, public spat,
yes,
earlier this year over repairs and renovations and who's responsible for that. And so now we're back to square one between the team and the county.
And the county, yeah, because it's this Stadium Real Estate Partners 2. They have decided they're out of here.
Yeah.
All right. The Diamondbacks say the reason they're out of here is because we refuse to meet. We refuse to meet because these folks would, as you said, wouldn't tell us who they really are, what they really represent, and what they really plan to do. Is that a reasonable concern?
Yeah, I think both sides put forth arguments about why this fell apart. The stadium group had folks out of Atlanta, investment folks out of New York, and they said, hey, we want to buy the stadium and land around it and fix up the stadium, renovate it. That's what the D-backs want. The county can't afford or hasn't been able to afford to pay for this, and so we're offering this solution. But there was a lot of questions to go on this all the way along, because the D-backs wanted to see the financials. Who are you? What are you going to do with this? There was questions about if they're going to buy it for $60 million, how much is the land on it worth? And this ballpark, which was built in '98, cost like $350 million to build.
Yes.
So you're selling it for 60. They were waiting on an appraisal to happen to see how much it's worth. A lot of folks in the real estate community were wondering, well, how much is the land worth, and how much land around the stadium in downtown Phoenix, which values are up, you see all these developments down here, how much that's worth. We never got that far.
Well, if the county is willing to sell this to this investment group for $60 million, D-backs say no for a variety of reasons. The D-backs can still buy, I mean, $60 million, that's a middle infielder for these guys. I mean, why aren't the D-backs buying this, getting the land, and then doing whatever big project they want to do to either renovate, repair, or tear the doggone thing down and build another one?
Yeah, there's questions about where the D-backs would have been if this would have moved forward. It never got that far. Why wasn't there an RFP put out for this, where you could have other folks come in and bid on this thing besides this group? This was a sole bid, and this was from them to the county, then the county moved forward. We never got that far, so we'll never kind of know. Maybe the D-backs could work something out, but the relations between the team and the county board of supervisors and the county, are pretty poor over the stadium. They've been going at each other for a while now.
It sounds, though, like the county wanted to get rid of this thing, and they found a willing partner to do so. I just don't understand why, if they want to get rid of it to the Diamondbacks and let them do whatever they want to do.
Yeah, I think if you look at it, the county could get rid of it to the team. The city of Phoenix could step in and maybe do it, or do some kind of deal where the D-backs run the stadium, the city owns it. The city and the team, the county and the team don't want to deal with each other on this right now, so we're kind of at an impasse. We're kind of back to square one.
Okay, I know that this investment group also agreed with the county that it was more like an $80 million repair job, as opposed to what the Diamondbacks see as a $187 some odd million repair job. What needs to be done to that stadium? I mean, is it in that bad a shape?
Yeah, it was only built in '98. There's been some water damage from how they cleaned the thing, and there's some structural damage, and the county and the team can't figure out who's responsible for that. Major repairs versus kind of minor repairs, major renovations versus cosmetic things. How's the lease deal with that? So they're not on the same page on that, and obviously they haven't been on the same page on how much it costs. The appraisal they were going to have from this real estate firm was supposed to look at some of that, but these things aren't easy. You don't sell existing ballparks very often.
Yes.
So it was kind of an unprecedented deal, and now it's an unprecedented dead deal.
All right, so how does this impact the idea? We're going to have Mayor Greg Stanton on tomorrow. I'm going to ask him the same question. How does this impact what the Suns are trying to do downtown?
Well, this stadium group had floated all kinds of ideas. Tear down Chase Field. Maybe we'll build another arena because they wanted to, obviously, I think, develop some of the land around between the arena and the stadium. We're still waiting on the Sheridan deal to close, the sale that the city owns the Sheridan. They need to sell that to be able to finance a new arena for the Suns. But there's a little bit of time for both the Suns and the D-backs to do this. So we're kind of waiting on that Sheridan deal to see what happens with the arena. But you got 3 teams, including the Coyotes, the 4 looking for new stadiums, looking for new arenas. And there's just not that kind of public appetite out there to subsidize these things. And so they got to overcome a lot of political opposition.
Real quickly, before you go, you mentioned the Coyotes. There was some talk that the Coyotes would be building an arena in conjunction with ASU over where the Karsten Golf Course is, there between Rural and McClintock, just south of, I think, Rio Salado Parkway, or Rio Salado. Lots of hoo-ha when this was first announced. The who and the ha have gotten very quiet here recently. Is this thing half-baked?
Well, they need to get some kind of deal from the legislature, most likely. They need to get tax increment financing or a special taxing district approved down there by the governor and by Republicans down there to be able to fund this thing. It would have an arena, maybe a hotel, and then you would capture the revenue around it. That's a tough go. It's a very conservative legislature. They don't like these kind of sweetheart deals for specific projects. The cities have been pushing for tax increment financing for a long time. They're going to make another push, but there's not a lot of appetite for that. It's a very fiscally conservative state on those things.
And again, regardless what ASU says, regardless what Tempe says, regardless what Phoenix says, what anyone says, in order to get tax increment financing, you've got to get approval of the legislature and signed by the governor. That's the law. Yeah,
and that's going to be tough to get through. And when the Coyotes and the development partner that they announced this with, the mayor of Tempe wasn't there. ASU folks, they'd like to see an arena there, I think, but they're not going to stick their neck out financially for that.
All right, good stuff, Mike. Good to have you here. Thanks for joining us. Like Donald Trump is in position to replace members of the United States Supreme Court, possibly extending his impact on the court and the country for decades to come. Here to discuss the High Court's future is law professor Paul Bender of ASU's Sandra Day O'Connor College of Law and attorney Stephen Montoya of Montoya, Lucero, and Pastor. Good to see you both here. Thanks for joining us. Paul, the Trump presidency, what does it mean for the Supreme Court?
It depends on whether you're thinking short-term or long-term. In the short term, assuming he picks somebody who is as much like Justice Scalia as he can, nothing will change from the way the court was before Scalia died, because it would just be a replacement for Scalia. And the court had been moving in a liberal direction. Kennedy had more and more often been voting with the liberals on things like gay marriage, race-conscious affirmative action, death penalty stuff. So you won't notice any change when that happens. The real change would come with the next appointment.
Yes.
If the next appointment is a member of the liberal group on the court, like Justice Ginsburg, then you would have, if Trump appointed again somebody really conservative, you would have a solid block of 5 conservatives, which we have not had since the mid-1930s.
With that in mind, do we have any inkling as to who he is looking at for this vacancy, the immediate vacancy?
I think we have more than an inkling because he's actually compiled a well-known list that I think he obtained from the Federalist Society and from the Heritage Foundation and from the Cato Institute. So I think he specified the types of folks he's looking for. I think, however, even the replacement of Scalia might work a change on the court. Scalia was a mixed bag. He tended to be pro-free speech, and he tended to be pro-Fourth Amendment, trying to limit searches and seizures. I don't know if his replacement will be so inclined. So it actually could be more, it could be worse than people imagine.
That list of 21 possibilities, though, that runs a little bit of a gamut there. I mean, can we get a
They're all very conservative.
Right, but can we get a profile of? I mean, I would imagine almost certainly anti-abortion.
Trump said that he's not going to appoint anybody who's not pro-life. But even if he does that, the chance of Roe and Wade being overruled in the near future, I think, are very, very small. First of all, it won't be overruled until he gets a second appointment. And then it depends on who the second appointment is. Judges live a long time, okay? It's only 3 years, because if you follow McConnell's approach, the last year of a president's term, you can't appoint anybody, got to wait for the next president. So even then, you have people on the court like Chief Justice Roberts, I hope, and Justice Alito, who think that a precedent like Roe and Wade, which has been in place for that long and which was reaffirmed explicitly a few years with Kennedy agreeing with Kennedy's not going to vote to overrule Roe and Wade. So you'd have to get 2 people who really are people who are willing to change things drastically. That's not likely to happen.
You think that this appointment and perhaps in the future, I mean, Ginsburg's 83, Kennedy's 80, Breyer's 78. I mean, these folks, they're getting up there. They could hang on. I mean, we've had older jurists in there, but I mean, what do you see? I mean, this could really be a major change here.
It could be a revolutionary change. I agree with Dean Bender. Scalia alone, I don't think, is going to work a mountain of change on the court. However, if one other justice departs, I think that could actually work a significant change. And the types of folks that Trump is talking about nominating, in my view, it wouldn't surprise me if they did rule to throw out Roe v. Wade. That is something that's long been on their agenda. It's a benchmark. I was surprised when Trump was elected. Honestly, if the court reversed Roe v. Wade, I wouldn't be horribly surprised.
But to do that, even if you assume that Thomas and Alito would go along with that, they need a 5th vote, even 2 new people. So a lot is up to Roberts. Just like in the near future, it's really the Kennedy court all over. And you're going to see that this term. They have cases that have been argued this term that are going to be decided by 8 justices. They've taken cases where it looks like they took them with 8 justices intending to overturn a conservative decision below. I think you're going to see Kennedy moving even more to the left.
As far as Merrick Garland is concerned, can President Obama go ahead and appoint him during the recess appointments? We've heard of this possibility. Is it possible that he could do this during a recess of Congress?
It's possible. I don't think it's very likely because of pro forma sessions. The Senate has mastered that. Now, if one senator is in town and speaks for 30 seconds, it's deemed a pro forma session that would prevent an interim appointment. And so I think it's very unlikely that would happen.
Unless they're really gone for 2 weeks or more, That's not going to happen, and Obama's not going to make a recess appointment. He had his chance to do that when Scalia died. Scalia actually died in a recess of the Senate, so Obama could immediately have appointed a recess appointment. He wouldn't do that. It's a very bad idea to have a recess appointment on the Supreme Court.
Justice Brennan was a recess appointment.
Interesting, interesting. Can Trump give a name to the Senate right now, and the Senate can go ahead and get started working on that?
That doesn't happen in the United States Congress. It happens in some states. It's happened in Arizona, for example, but as far as I know, that's never been done, and I don't think that's going to happen. He's going to wait until he's confirmed, and maybe the first day he will announce a name. And then it's going to take some time, depending on who the person is. But if the Democrats put up some resistance to it, then it may take a couple of months. It usually does. That'll mean we'll go this whole term with only 8 justices on the court.
Does he go extreme hard right with this first pick to placate his base, to placate those who voted for him for this one express purpose? Or does he try to find, obviously we're probably not going to get a Democrat in there, but find some sort of common ground at all?
My guess is he's going to go hard right. If you look at his other appointments, they've conformed to that tendency. I think he likes doing what he claimed he was going to do. I think he's going to pick someone extremely conservative, someone bankably conservative. I think he's going to pick someone probably to the right of Scalia, and I do think that's possible.
I agree, that's possible.
He's going to have to search hard, but remember, I think he'll find it's a big country.
But remember, if he does that, that's not automatic. There's still a filibuster in the Senate for Supreme Court appointments, and the Democrats are going to have to make it up their minds whether they're going to try to filibuster, especially if it's really, really hard right, they might try, or let that one go by, try to be nice about it, and maybe get some goodwill going, and then worry about the next one. But if they try to filibuster the first appointment and it's hard right, then there's a good chance the Senate will remove the filibuster for Supreme Court appointments. That would be really earth-shaking and not a good idea. Just judicial appointments are for life. Mm-hmm. I don't think you want them confirmed by a one-vote margin. You want a solid majority.
I totally agree. I think that principle should have been equally applicable to the lower court judges that the Democrats did away with in 2013 actually. Mm. That's really sad. That's going to come back to haunt us. I think that the courts of appeals are going to become much more conservatively inclined. The district courts are going to be very conservatively inclined. There are 81 vacancies on the district court, 13 vacancies on the Court of Appeals. That's going to make a big difference.
Yeah, that'll take some time, but that's what happens. If presidents stay in office for a while, they get to remake the lower court.
Yes.
The lower courts now are quite liberal as compared to when Obama came in. And if Trump is in there for 8 years, the same thing's going to happen.
Does
the other direction.
Do the thoughts of the justices on the court right now, do they change at all or shift or adjust, knowing that a hard right member is just around the corner?
I think they do. Brennan is a good example. Warren is a good example. Blackmun is a good example. Sometimes they shift the other way. Perhaps the justice that Dean Bender clerked for, Frankfurter, would be an example of that. He was really more liberal before he came to the court than when he sat on the court.
People change, but I think their attitude is going to be, let's wait and see. They have a strong feeling that as a group, they can civilize almost anybody who's appointed, really, and bring them into the way they usually do things. So I doubt if they're going to sit there and say, we know a really, really hard right person is going to be confirmed, and therefore we have to do such and such. I think it's a wait and see.
Republicans in Congress, I mean, how likely if he nominates his sister? His sister is, I've heard rumors
that would be one
sister.
Of the better nominations.
Yeah, she's a judge.
She's a good judge.
She's a judge.
Pro-life judge.
Yeah, yes, she is. Is she a pro-life judge?
No, excuse me, a pro-choice judge.
Pro-choice judge. Okay, well then he's not going to nominate.
She's disqualified.
She's out of there. Yeah. But I mean, if he nominates, I don't know, Ted Danson or just someone out of the blue who has absolutely no experience, are there enough Republicans in Congress to say, all right, this has got to stop?
There were 48 Democrats there. So if he nominated somebody really, really, really out of the mainstream, it's possible that 2 or 3 Republicans would say no. remember, every Republican in Congress was not an advocate of Trump, and so some of those people could depart in a nomination like that. I think you really have to wait and see what's going to happen. You can't tell now.
Yeah.
I don't think that's going to happen, though, because I think that the individuals that he's deriving the list from are relatively predictable in their selections. The Federalist Society, as Dean Bender knows, they're pretty reliable in their picks. The Heritage Foundation, very reliable in their picks.
By reliable, you mean they're conservative,
They're reliable,
but they're
reliably
acceptable.
conservative,
but acceptable.
and mainstream conservatives.
That's probably true.
Big name or a name that we don't know, most of us aren't aware of?
I think it's going to be a name that most of us are not aware of, because I think that's just the way Trump likes to roll.
Well, I didn't recognize any of the names on the list. That's probably my fault. But I think it will be somebody who's not a household name.
All right, gentlemen, good discussion and good to have you here. Thanks for joining us.
you.
We appreciate it. Tonight's edition of Arizona Technology and Innovation looks at how hockey is being used to teach STEM skills. It takes about 10,000 gallons of water to create the 1-inch layer of ice that the Arizona Coyotes play on. That's just one interesting fact that school students learned on a recent visit to Gila River Arena. Producer Elisa Adams and photographer Rob McJanet went along to Coyotes STEM Day.
So I have the hockey rink, and it's going down. This is melting ice going down the pipe.
When you ask students to design the arena of the future, be prepared.
I think we should include something that includes everything, something creative and unique.
To be surprised.
Are they going to have a fish tank in every single hallway?
Because for most of these students, being curious is innate, and creativity, well, it's the key to innovation.
Would you pay the robot?
These students are getting a chilly introduction into what STEM looks like in the real world.
How many of you guys is their first time being in the arena here?
At the Coyote STEM Day, hundreds of students from across the state get a behind-the-scenes dose of science, technology, engineering, and math in action.
We want to ruin the way that kids look at the world, and by that I mean we want them to see STEM everywhere. And experiences like this that show them that what looks like a simple hockey arena is really quite complicated and has STEM at every level.
From how the seats in the stadium are configured,
Really big arena, as you can see. It was built for hockey.
to the ice that makes speed possible.
Our ice floor contains about 4,500 gallons of salt water.
So here's the ice surface.
This place is full of connections to learning that students can see and touch. The teachers know that experiences like this plant a seed.
Not all of the students we have here today are even really STEM focused, or do they know they are yet? No. Have they found an access point into science, technology, engineering, math? Not necessarily. This might be, so I'm hoping that this can be an opportunity for all of the students we have here today to see that there's an access point for them to think about these ideas.
Pretty cool, isn't it?
And they are thinking.
You guys excited to be here?
First reality check, it isn't just the professional athletes that make this place work. In addition to a top-to-bottom tour, students meet engineers, media managers, even the Zamboni operator.
My job is to maintain the ice out there pretty much at all times.
So they can see all the arena careers that don't require skating skills.
Choose one person from each group to come up and get a paper.
Then the students are tasked with an assignment.
Which area of the whole entire arena do you want to do?
Come up with an arena of the future.
Let's go till it's almost in its liquid state, but it's not evaporating yet, so like semi-solid.
Some of the students already get the idea that STEM isn't confined to a classroom.
So like when I look at that little stand over there, I think of how geometry comes into play and how it's a bunch of rectangles put together, but I also think of how the measurements come into play and make it that strong shape.
But for others, this kind of activity brings it all home.
We are working on the future technology. I enjoy it a lot. I like how we can learn a lot of things.
And students aren't the only ones learning here today.
And the teachers, while the students are doing the Hockey Arena of the Future Design Challenge, will actually be doing 2 hours of professional development called Engineering Everywhere. And they'll get their hands on some really cool projects, from a propeller-powered helicopter and a propeller-powered car, and then all the supplies so that they can actually go and do this with their students tomorrow if they want to.
Chances are they'll want to jump back in away from the ice. You see, these students believe they've got the answers.
Well, they want us to think 20 years ahead, and maybe 20 years isn't that much of a technological advance. But we should also think in terms of history too, and how some of the biggest technological advances were happening in times when people thought they wouldn't.
Like sitting on the floor of an ice arena, just dreaming.
That'd be cool.
Coyote STEM Day is part of the STEM-mazing project, a professional development program that gives teachers new skills to teach science, technology, math, and engineering. Wednesday on Arizona Horizon, it's our monthly conversation with Phoenix Mayor Greg Stanton, who will discuss how the city will deal with illegal immigrants in a Trump administration. And we'll take a look at the Shop Small movement. That's tomorrow on Arizona Horizon. That is it for now. I'm Ted Simons. Thank you so much for joining us. You have a great evening.
Arizona Horizon is made possible by contributions from the Friends of Arizona PBS, members of your PBS station. Thank you.